tell a little bit to our audiences about what your background is like, and how did you approach your entire interview preparation?
The interview prep was largely around a fixed set of questions, which tend to be common across interviews and across schools. The aim was to make sure that the story was absolutely sure, like you knew what you want to talk about in what question and what is the sort of image you wanted to project. So once you have the story straight, then I think I took my interviews, and I think you helped me a lot sort of get the 90-second deadline, which is something that I was struggling with, I think, the most. To make sure that I knew what is the messaging I wanted to give out in the 90 seconds and make sure that it fits in there. So that was what I was trying to do. So I think we did 2 interviews. Apart from actually interviewing with you, I think I was spending the rest of the time trying to write down my answers. So I sort of practiced them over and over again, practice talking for 90 seconds and then stopping and not making it sound abrupt. So I think just not interviewing in front of too many people, but just knowing what your answers are going to be, because there is a grand total of some 10 questions which are going to come. They're known to everyone.
So let's speak about your experience at Yale. And just for our audiences, you missed out on introducing yourself. So let's start with the introduction first, and then we'll speak about your Yale experience.
Okay. Wow. Okay. You have to give the same 90-second introduction that I gave in my interview.
You can just do it in 45 seconds if that makes you more comfortable.
Okay. So I'm currently working at an investment bank. I worked in finance for the past 3-4 years. And I was applying to business schools with the intention of sort of moving out of the investment banking career into something else, either consulting or even impact investing, honestly. So I have applied to schools across the East Coast and sort of focused myself on the finance schools, so to speak. And I think, so a lot of my learnings would be from that.
Perfect. So before we speak about your Yale interview experience, you were on campus. So Yale has a beautiful campus. It resembles Hogwarts. That's what I've sort of learned from people. So what was it like being on campus, and did you get to interact with people, and what did you learn from your interactions?
So actually I was kind of glad that I went to campus, because definitely it was a very different experience from what I would get over here. So I had one interview in India, at which point I had met a lot of people who I was interviewing with from India itself. So they are very similar in background to me. So I think I sort of missed out the whole diversity concept. But the minute I reached Yale, so what they had also done is they had about 100 odd students come in on the same day who would be interviewing with us. And there were a lot of opportunities for you to sort of interact with them. They took you on a tour and everything. And one of the things that really stood out at Yale, at least, was how diverse that class was really going to be. It was not a joke. Not only, of course, a lot of them were from different parts of US, because of course US people would tend to come more for interviews, but they were doing very different things, be it someone working in the cocoa industry, somebody working in policy research, somebody working in sales, somebody working as a startup. So it really sort of dawned on me, I think, at that point, how diverse this class is going to be, and how this experience will actually be different from doing an MBA in India, I think. And I really, really liked my Yale sort of overall experience. It was very well planned. The Dean, Ted Snyder, is absolutely phenomenal. We had a 1 hour or maybe 40 minutes odd sort of session with him, where he talked about not just his school, but what they're trying to do and everything. And he really captivated that audience. I mean, you really wanted to study from this guy, or because he looked like he had some vision. He was very easy to connect with and things like that. So first session was Ted Snyder. The second session was with one of the faculty members who used to be a deputy dean before. So he basically talked about electives. He talked about how electives worked. He talked about how the class sort of function. So, how different each sort of class could be. You could have one case-based thing, you could have one, completely lecture-based thing. Then they had courses which sort of are taught by different faculty members. The same course, if it's finance course, it could be taken by a finance professor and an accounting professor. So both the professors were playing to their strengths, and neither of them had to sort of cover an area which they didn't know about. So they sort of talked about a lot of the experimentation they had done with all this, and that again really sort of helped sell the school a lot. The campus itself was pretty big because they also showed us the Yale University part of it. So there were a lot of undergrad. So in fact, 2 undergrad students took us around, so they could also talk about the kind of resources that the undergrad students sort of get to use on campus. And it was a very, very beautiful campus, because I think all of the undergrad campuses in US, at least, so I checked out Cornell and Yale, both of them are very pretty. So Yale is actually better in the sense that it's closer to New York, so it's just like a 1.5 hour train ride away, and you can get a train like every 15-20 minutes. So that is another plus that I realized, because at least for MBA, a lot of people have to keep traveling to New York for jobs. So I think that helps. I think overall it was even the SOM building is really beautiful, and it's like a glass building and everything. So I really, really like the school.
Awesome. So in terms of like attending a lecture or a class, did you get to do that?
No, so they had a pretty packed schedule. So I attended an ice hockey game because I came in a day earlier. So I reached the previous evening, and the good thing about that was it was a game between first years and second years. So I actually got to see like their day-to-day life, sort of how they sort of interact with each other. But yeah, I didn't get to attend a class, but I suspect that it might have been something similar on the lines of what we attended in the morning, like the sessions. But yeah, they didn't give us time for class.
So you've done quite a few off-campus interviews and on-campus interviews. So what in your opinion is the benefit of doing an on-campus versus an off-campus interview?
So an on-campus interview definitely prepares you better for the interview. I mean, there is no question about it. So at Yale, I did not reach much earlier, so I didn't really have too much talk about the campus at that point. But at Cornell, I had actually reached in the morning, and my interview was in the evening. So I had an entire day to meet people, to actually go around campus, and then to figure out, like, to sort of name drop, so to speak, during my interview. So an on-campus interview, number one, gives you a sense of what you want to talk about, gives you a sense of what is sort of the atmosphere, what people really sound like. So, you know what your fit is or what you're supposed to be sort of talking about. And it's like also a great way for you to understand what campus you would prefer more. I mean, that's not something that usually international applicants can understand sitting in India. But yeah, the on-campus interviews means that you will also be sort of held to a different, maybe, I don't know, you'll probably be held to a slightly different standard, in the sense that now you're kind of, interviewing with the US applicants, who would know a lot more about US education system in general, and will be able to maybe connect a little better with it, and maybe even be able to use it better in their interviews. So you're going to be like sandwiched between like other US candidates, and you may come off as fairly boring in that. But that's a risk. I mean, I don't know how that pans out, but yeah. So that's one risk.
No one really knows how the applicants are aggregated. But the point is that the biggest categorization or the bucketing of the candidates happen according to their nationalities. So from that perspective, you would still be compared against Indian candidates. So Indian candidates who are being interviewed via Skype versus you interviewing on campus.
Yeah, maybe. Cool. So hopefully that will work for you.
So perfect. So with that, let's move on to speaking about your interview experience. And so what were your general impressions, and who interviewed you to begin with? I mean, was it a student or an AdCom member who interviewed you?
So in Yale, they had told us that it could either be a student or a second year student or an AdCom member. But for almost everyone, it was a student. At Yale, the student community is very active in terms of this whole process. So they even had like a panel discussion which was organized just by the students and no professors or whatever involved. The students who were interviewing, I was interviewed also by a student. The students who were interviewing us were mostly already done with their sort of placement, so to speak. So they knew where they were going to join. They'd already had an internship experience. So they had some idea of what like Yale was about. My personal interview was actually, so I think they tried to match some sort of background. It didn't happen in my case, but for a lot of people, they did try to get someone who understands something about the industry. In my case, they had gotten someone from corporate finance, who was going to work in corporate finance, maybe just so that they get the finance bit of it. But he was much older than me. So he had a wife who was staying there. He had kids who were staying on campus with him. So I think there was slight difference in how we would approach any sort of question. But yeah, they did try to match, or at least make sure that the interviewer in front of you understood a little bit about what you're going to talk about.
And what was the style of your interview? Was it conversational, or was he trying to pressure test you on certain questions, or was it a mixed approach? What was it like?
No, definitely not pressure test. That was not, I think so I also got a chance to sort of hear from other people how their interviews went, and almost none of them seemed to be like a pressure test. All of them seemed very conversational as to, okay, what are you really doing here and things like that. In my case, again, since I think there was a slight sort of difference in how we were as people, it was slightly more formal. He would sort of ask a question. So he had a sheet in front of him which clearly had some 7-8 odd questions. So he would just sort of read off the list and I would answer, and then he would write 2 words. So I was aware that okay, so that many questions are still left and I need to get through all of them. So it was a little more formal, I think, in my case, but I also heard cases where it was a lot more chilled out, and based on who was interviewing, it was a lot more easy to talk.
Perfect. So can you speak now about the flow of the interviews? How did it start? What kind of questions were asked? How did it progress eventually?
Sure. So my interview, I had picked an early morning time so that I could enjoy the rest of the day. Actually sort of focus on things that they were doing and not worry about the interview. So my interview started off before, so I had not gotten any feedback from anyone else before. So I was going in blind. We were sort of, everyone who was supposed to interview at that time was sort of sitting in a room, and they would come and just take you, and each student would just come and call out your name and take you. They took you to a separate room wherein the interview starts by sort of introducing himself, giving a little bit background of what he's doing and what he's doing here, and whatever, a little bit about himself. And then he sort of goes on to asking about you. So obviously the first question is, tell us about yourself, which is I think the standard question. And then
this year schools have changed this question quite a lot. So a lot of applicants that I'm speaking with, they just the first question that business schools tend to throw this year is that, why do you want to come to this school? So that's the more of a start this year. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, no, I think I sort of lucked out also, because in the second year students, they've not interviewed that many people for the school. They're not AdCom members, so they're not really trying to trick you. They're also trying to just get through the interview themselves. So no, both my interviews started off with, tell us about yourself, is very standard. And then based on sort of how you started off, they could take it to different sides. So they had to ask about one strength, one time you succeeded, one time you failed. So both were separate questions for me. They asked me about why I'm doing the current job. What do I do? So I think the first question was, tell me about yourself. Then he asked me, what do you currently do? A little more detail on what you do. Then he's why? So I kind of already covered in that why I changed my job. So I don't think he needed to ask me that again. Then he sort of asked about what research did you do about the school to get here. So that is, I think, somewhat of the why MBA here question. So that's the question I ended up answering anyway. And I also sort of told him, I've spoken to so-and-so people, and I whatever, taken so-and-so course or something like that. I probably did not cover as much of the research that I actually done, because I was trying to also fit the 90-second window, but hopefully I got some of it covered. So I think, so I've covered 3 questions, and then the fourth was obviously, what did you succeed at? Except that he made it, what did you succeed at in a professional setting? That kind of threw me off a bit, because I did not prepare for it in a professional setting. So what I should have done is pivoted and sort of managed to get in the story that I anyway prepared. But what I didn't do is that, and I actually did end up saying one of the succeeding stories from a professional, and it was the same as my essay in the application. So he had told me he has not read my application, he has no idea what is in it, he only has my CV. So because he said the whole professional setting, and I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So does it, like, I should have just asked him, okay, can I like make it slightly different? But I didn't. So yeah, so the fourth question was, what is a success? Then he asked me, what is a failure, which is fine, which was prepared already. Then I think he just basically gave me a little window to ask a few questions of my own. And he sort of also so he had also asked, I had mentioned that in the research that in the research that you've done for the school and everything, I sort of also mentioned some of the clubs that I had, the heads which I had spoken to, or some of the clubs I found out about. And one of the clubs was something that he himself was a part of. So he had sort of dropped a few informations about himself through the interview, like, okay, I'm doing this, or whatever. So that gave me an into what questions I would want to ask him. So after these questions are over, he sort of gave me time to ask him questions. So I asked him like 2-3 questions. And then he asked me, so they had asked us to submit a quote for Yale. So that was the last thing he asked me. Why did you pick this quote, and sort of, what do you want to talk about? And then I gave my response to that. Then we still, I think, had like half a minute or a minute left. So he's like, do you have any more questions? I think I made something up, I don't remember. But yeah, so that was it. So the whole thing was finished in 30 minutes. It was very Q&A. But I'm sure, like, if you had a little more in common with your interviewer, there was enough scope for you to sort of take it into a, like a personality thing. And then after the interview was over, so they walk you back. So at that time, I got a little more of the conversational thing. So right after the interview ended, he was a lot more candid as to, so I like asked him about his family and how they're sort of dealing with the whole MBA thing, how stressful it is on like whatever, living there and having an MBA and all that. So he told me a little more about all that. So yeah.
So I mean, my impressions on what you were speaking about was, I mean, if I just have to quickly summarize this. So one was that it was a timed interview, and
yes,
there was a clock, so they had to end the interview in 30 minutes. That's the sense that I got.
Yeah.
That was one. There was like bunch of questions that he had to go through, and he went through almost all the questions, and he was taking notes, not extensive notes, but just like keywords, 2 or 3 keywords along the way. And your experience was a 360-degree kind of an interview where he asked about your experiential aspects, whether it was your strengths, weakness, failure, etc. And then there were also questions around like, why do you want to do an MBA, etc.
Yeah.
Okay? So to what extent, did they grill you on why you want to come to Yale? Because this is like one question that, at least this year, a lot of schools are severely testing candidates on that. Why do you want to come to this particular school? And they keep like, 15 minutes of the conversation ends up going here. So was this the case with Yale as well?
No, so they had the question on sort of, so he did try to ask me why Yale. Which is a sort of continuation of what kind of research have you done. So in that itself, he sort of put in the why Yale thing. So when I talk about clubs, I talk about, so a little bit I sort of went also to the conversations I had just before entering, and the kind of diversity. So actually like, okay, you know what, I actually spoke to these people now, and I actually see the diversity you're talking about. But he did not spend too much time on it. Now I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because he also hid his face to be like, so it was a very confusing interview because he sat through the interview like this, which makes it really difficult, and he had like a beard and all, which made it really difficult for me to read his face. So I have zero idea of whether he was convinced or not convinced or whatever, and he didn't even talk a lot. But yeah, he just asked me in that one point, and then he didn't grill me after that.
And also, I mean, my understanding is that since you were on campus, it shows that you were very passionate about the school. Therefore, you took the trip from India to go to US and attend the school. So obviously, they are not going to grill you. That's the logical argument here. But anyway, I mean, it's always good to know that the school wasn't grilling you too much on this aspect. What worked well for you in this interview? And what are 2 or 3 key things that worked in your favor, which sort of help you build rapport with the interview?
I think being on campus helped because I attended the ice hockey game and he played hockey. So I got like a 2-minute window into sort of having a casual conversation in the middle of my interview. So after that, I think he became a little bit more receptive to me because he had finally something to connect me. 2, I think being on campus overall also helped because, I could talk a little bit about how I like the place or whatever. And I think the third thing which somehow worked out for me here, I don't know if it's worked out, but the third thing that I noticed that I was one of very few finance professionals who had come to interview that day. But I knew that a lot of them wanted to get into finance because we had spoken a bit before my interview, but all of them were from either something like policy or something very non sort of finance related, and I also knew that that was something that a lot of students traditionally at Yale sort of struggled with, because a lot of them do come from these kind of backgrounds. Being Yale, it takes a lot of people from social sciences or people who've done other courses, so finance is typically less. So that's something again I was able to bring in, that listen, I've done this, I've had like a 4-year or 3-year or whatever, I've done my CFA, this, that. So I have some ideas, so I'm like slightly, I'm going to be able to help whatever my classmates, or I sort of added this into my what will you bring to SOM answer. So I think that sort of stood out. But I don't know, I mean, if I'd been in India, the situation would have been reverse. Because I think typically a lot of financial candidates from India would apply to schools. So yeah, I think that I stood out in that.
Perfect. So in terms of positioning, I mean, how important do you think it is for candidates who are interviewing with top schools to have a strategy before going into the interview? Or can you just do it on the fly? So I mean, the second approach is...
Definitely do it. No, definitely go in with strategy. I think that's something that even you made very clear to me before going in, and I think maybe if I'd done a few more interviews before that, I might have been a lot better prepared for Yale. Because I think with every interview you sort of get better at understanding how you take interview questions. So definitely have a positioning statement, so that if you get a curveball question, what helps is when you have a question that's unexpected, you know what you want to say. I mean, you just have to then sort of force fit, okay, this is what I want to say and this is the question, how do I bring this together? If you do not have a strategy, you will just talk. Like, that can happen. You will ramble. I can ramble, clearly.
I think when we started preparing for your interviews together, you used to take like 3.5 minutes to give out every answer.
Which I think I'm still doing, but I didn't do that in the interview. Thanks to whatever preparation we had done. But I think take a few more sort of interviews, and if possible, do like one interview with someone that has not prepared you. So I think one of the things that sort of also took me aback is, since I was preparing with you, I know you, I've already spoken to you, you are already aware of my story. So I was like a little more like easy on the answers, I didn't feel the need to explain, or I didn't feel the need to like sort of be nervous about, okay, how are you taking this thing, because I've spoken to you before. But that took me really sort of by surprise in the interview, because my interviewer looked very like scary, in the sense that he really looked like, someone who's older and who's like taking me for a job or something like that. So that unnerved me, because I could not read his thing. So that sort of maybe played into my answers as well, or I may have come off as more like, I don't know, like unprepared or whatever. But I think like it helps to have one interview with someone who, like, it could be like someone who's never heard your answers before or whatever, and see if they still buy it.
Perfect. So just to round our discussion on Yale, I mean, we have given a lot of insights, but if you just have to summarize your top 3 advice to future applicants, what would that be?
Go through your application, so you know your story. Go prepare for like the interview by doing mock interviews before, and practice how to answer in short sentences.